If you've ever been in the market for a new microphone, you've probably seen that most large diaphragm condensers are categorized into two categories: FET mics and tube microphones. However, I don't see a lot of people talk about what the actual differences of FET and tube mics are, and we get a lot of questions on this channel on which is better for pop vocals, which is better for acoustic guitar, why are tube mics so much more expensive than FET mics. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to go over the differences between an FET mic and a tube mic, and I even have some audio examples that we're going to use for spoken word, singing vocals, and acoustic guitar to really highlight what the sonic characteristics of an FET mic versus a tube mic are, where I kind of prefer them in my own workflows, and I'm going to give you some recommendations on mics that I think are really, really good fits in 3 different budget categories for FET mics and tube mics. So we're going to dive into all of that, but before we do, my name's Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music, where we have weekly tutorials on music and music production. If you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us out a ton, and if you want to see more videos in the future, let us know what you want to see in the comments down below. After this video, head over to our website, makepopmusic.com. You can support us over there. We have sample packs, preset packs, a start to finish production course, and a ton of free content. So go check that out. But let's dive in so we can actually determine what the differences between an FET mic and a tube microphone are. So before we dive into actual comparisons of these microphones, let's go over some basic definitions. So I got these definitions from mynewmicrophone.com. FET microphones, also called field effect transistors, are active electrical devices that use an electric field from a microphone capsule to control a flow of current that ultimately becomes the mic signal. FETs take the high impedance signal from a mic capsule and output that as a usable and proportional low impedance signal. So just to break that down, this is the FET mic we're going to be using today. It is the Vanguard V4. So sound comes in through the top, goes down through a transistor, and then outputs with an XLR cable into whatever preamp you're going to be using for an FET mic. Now let's talk about what a tube microphone is. So a tube mic refers to any active microphone, typically a large diaphragm condenser, that utilizes a tube vacuum, typically a triode, as its impedance converter. Tube mics pass their capsule signals through a tube and other components before the signal is outputted. Here is the tube microphone we're going to be using for this example. This is the Vanguard V13. The reason that we're using these two microphones is because a lot of the time when people compare FET and tube mics, they're comparing different microphones altogether. What's cool about these and what Vanguard does is the FET and the tube mic are essentially the exact same microphone, other than one being an FET circuit and one being a tube circuit. So all the other materials are the same, size and general weight is the same, so you're not going to get any like body resonances or capsule differences. They're essentially the same exact microphone, just with an FET circuit and a tube circuit, so we should really be able to see how that circuitry sounds totally different. So the way a tube mic works is sound will come in through this capsule behind the grill, again just like an FET mic, but instead of going down through a transistor, what it's going to do is go through a vacuum tube. So this is why tube mics generally have a much different tone. They typically have some saturation in the low mids. They typically have a smoother top end, where FET mics are really bright. They have a really aggressive top end, super good for bite. These tube mics going through that vacuum tube, it just kind of smooths everything out, gives it that kind of vintage sonic quality that you're used to in your microphones, and it just gives you a completely different flavor. And these don't use an XLR cable, these actually use a 7-prong cable, and pretty much every tube microphone is going to come with its own power supply. So you plug this from a 7-prong cable into a power supply, and then that power supply will have an XLR out that ends up going to whatever preamp you're going to use. So for the test today, these are the two microphones that we're going to be using: the Vanguard V4 for our FET and the Vanguard V13 for our tube mic. Both of them are going straight into an RME UFX 2, no preamps, no compression, no nothing on the way in. Before I dive in, I will give you a little bit of detail about these specific mics. So like I said, we're using them because they have pretty much the same body, the same capsule, the same size and dimensions. So we can really hear what the circuitry is doing. We're not going to get body resonances or capsule differences or, differences in the mic grill. So I'm really excited to actually test what these circuits are doing. If you're interested in the V4, it is an FET mic. It has 3 polar patterns, and it has a -10 and -20 dB pad, which is really good if you want to use it for guitar amps or drum overheads, any really, really loud sources. And this mic at retail is $699. So this is a good kind of medium level FET mic. It's definitely a step up from your really beginner level or budget level FET microphones, and it's still kind of in a price point where you're not getting into that like Neumann FET range. And then other than that, you have the V13. This mic comes with that extra power supply. This actually has 9 polar patterns. So you have your Omni, you have your figure 8, and you have your cardioid, but you've actually got different spots in between all of those. So you can do like a cardioid and Omni blend or a cardioid and figure 8 blend. It's really cool. You have a lot of different options with this microphone, and all of that is actually on the power supply, not on the microphone itself. This one has a -10 dB pad, so again, you can use it on some louder signals, but it doesn't have -20, so I would probably avoid this on like guitar cabs, really, really loud, aggressive overheads, anything like that. This one also has a low roll-off filter, and this mic comes in at $1149. So really good kind of mid-level FET and tube microphone options here. I'm excited to actually show you how different these sound. So now that we've gone over what a tube mic is and what an FET mic is, and I've gave you a little bit of details about the specific FET and tube mics we're using in this shootout, let's go ahead and let's start looking at some examples. So the first example is just a spoken word example. You're going to see that the FET mic is in this bright pink and the tube mic is in this purple. So whenever the bright pink is going, FET. Whenever the purple's going, tube. We'll also have this labeled on the screen for you, but you should be able to hear some sonic characteristics. Let's take a listen. Okay, here is the first mic test to show you what the difference of an FET mic versus a tube mic sounds like. So right now I am speaking into the Vanguard V4. This is their version of an FET mic. I am standing about 7 to 8 inches away from the microphone, and I do have a pop filter up just so you don't get any of those plosives. Again, this is the V4 FET mic from Vanguard Audio. Now I'm going to swap over to the V13. This is their version of a tube microphone. Again, the bodies and the materials, other than the actual circuits themselves, are almost identical, so this is a really good, clear representation of what FET versus tube actually sounds like without a million other factors. So this is the V13 tube microphone. Now I am back to the V4 FET microphone. Can you hear any actual audio sonic differences between an FET mic and between a tube mic? Let me know. Okay, so you can hear that there are pretty discernible differences, especially if you're listening on monitors or headphones. One thing that I will say is I use the cardioid pattern for every example on this. So we didn't use Omni, we didn't use Figure 8, and I didn't use any of the pads or roll-off filters. These are 100% stock settings. Another thing that I will note is the FET mic did take a little bit more gain than the tube mic. So I think the tube mic was at like 30 dB of gain, and the FET mic was closer to like 38, 40 dB of gain. But we did match these with a VU meter, and again, they're not hitting any external preamps or compressors, just the preamp and my RME interface. So now that we've listened one time through, what I'll do is I will pull up a little spectrum analyzer, and this is the only thing we have on this. No master bus settings, no vocal bus settings, just a little bit of gain so it's not super quiet on the video, and this Pro Q just to kind of monitor the spectral meters. So let's take a look at when this actually switches. Let me see if I can move this where you can still follow. All right, let's take a listen. Okay, here is the first mic test to show you what the difference of an FET mic versus a tube mic sounds like. So right now I am speaking into the Vanguard V4. This is their version of an FET mic. I am standing about 7 to 8 inches away from the microphone, and I do have a pop filter up just so you don't get any of those plosives. Again, this is the V4 FET mic from Vanguard Audio. Now I'm going to swap over to the V13. This is their version of a tube microphone. Again, the bodies and the materials, other than the actual circuits themselves, are almost identical, so this is a really good, clear representation of what FET versus tube actually sounds like without a million other factors. So this is the V13 tube microphone. Now I am back to the V4 FET microphone. Can you hear any actual audio sonic differences between an FET mic and between a tube mic? Let me know. Okay, so you can make your own judgments about the differences. They both have their practical uses. I always have FET and tube microphones in my studio. One thing that I notice is, this is typical of almost all FETs versus their tube counterparts, is that FET does not have nearly as much kind of low-mid frequency. That's typically because tubes will saturate low mids, and it kind of gives them that nice, warm, fluffy sound of a tube mic. But with an FET, you don't really have that. Where I think FETs really kind of succeed in a mix is that the mids right here, right between like 800 and like 3K, I think are much more forward and aggressive. They're a lot more bitey. So I love FETs on things like acoustic guitars, drums. If I have a singer that has a super chesty voice, I'll go for FET instead of tube because I don't need the tube to really accent their low end of their voice, especially in like a dense pop track. So FETs, I think, are generally a little bit thinner and a little bit more aggressive and punchy and brighter, where the tube mic, it has some of that bloom in the low mids. It has that kind of smoother top end where that like 2K to 5K is still pretty present, but you're really getting that like silky 10K and up, where FET is just bright, it's in your face, it's punchy, it's going to sit at the front of the mix. So it really depends on what your source is. Is it a male vocal, a female vocal, a soprano, a tenor? Is it a soft R&B song? Is it a ballad? Is it a dense pop arrangement? It really all depends, and that's why most brands will have an FET mic in their collection and a tube mic is because most studios will need both. That's actually why the Lewitt 1040 that we've been using on the channel now for like a year and a half is really cool, because that can actually do both. So I hope that this kind of just highlights how different the FET and the tube mic sound just on a male vocal speaking. So now that we've shown you that and I've kind of gone over some of my basic characteristics of tube versus FET, let's do a quick proximity test. So this is with the Vanguard V4 FET and the V13 tube. So you can just hear how they both respond to proximity. Now, before we go into any singing examples or examples of other audio, I do want to do a proximity effect. So right now I'm on the V4. I'm about 8 to 9 inches back, and I'm going to slowly back up just so you can hear what the proximity sounds like. Now I am about 2 feet away from the V4. I'm making my way in, and now I am about 3 inches from the actual capsule. Let's move over to the V13. This is the tube mic. Now I'm standing about 8 to 9 inches back. I'm going to go ahead and move back towards about 2 feet. So now I am about 2 feet away from the V13, the actual tube microphone. I'm making my way back in, and now I am about 3 inches away from the actual capsule. So this should be a good test on how both of these mics actually handle proximity. So you can see that they both have a similar response and how they start to dial back gain and volume as I back up. However, the FET mic, I think, still retains a lot of that brightness when I back off, where with the tube, it really starts to roll off the top end as I get further back. That's why you're going to hear tube microphones a lot for like drum rooms, strings, choirs, things where it kind of wants to roll off some of that high that's going to be resonating around a room. You're going to get kind of that smoother high mid, where FET is going to be great if you're using it for overheads because you're still getting that really bright, aggressive sound that's right in your face. Now that I've shown you that, let's go ahead and let's go to a singing example. So I'll show you what these sound like in solo, and then I'll show you what they sound like in a mix with some processing. They're both going to have the exact same processing. It's just auto-tune, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and then some de-essing. So here's what the V4 sounds like. Nothing on the vocal bus, nothing on the master, nothing on the way in.
I could give you every piece of me, I know that's not enough. I could buy you cars and diamond rings, but you would still give me up. I could tell you all the ways that you're changing me. You keep lying on my face and then blaming me. I was really starting to think you were saving me, but the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah. I said the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah.
All right, now let's go to the V13, the tube mic. And again, pay attention to the low mids and pay attention to the high mids. Those are the two biggest differences between FET and tube, in my opinion.
I could give you every piece of me, I know that's not enough. I could buy you cars and diamond rings, but you would still give me up. I could tell you all the ways that you're changing me. You keep lying on my face and then blaming me. I was really starting to think you were saving me, but the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah. I said the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah.
One thing to note, these were the exact same vocal performance. I had the capsules right on top of each other, and I sang right into the middle of both of them. So this is the same exact performance. Now that you've heard each of them in solo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate. So if the pink is highlighted, that means it's the FET. If the purple is highlighted, that means it's the tube. So we're going to go phrase by phrase. So it'll go FET, tube, FET, tube. Let's take a listen.
I could give you every piece of me, I know that's not enough. I could buy you cars and diamond rings, but you would still give me up. I could tell you all the ways that you're changing me. You keep lying on my face and then blaming me. I was really starting to think you were saving me, but the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah. I said the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah.
So you can really hear the differences of FET versus tube when they're played back to back. What I want to do now is I want to show you what these sound like in a mix with just some kind of basic compression, EQ, and de-essing. Basically just like a starting vocal chain, nothing super fun or super creative. Here's the FET in the mix with kind of minimal vocal chain.
I could give you every piece of me, I know that's not enough. I could buy you cars and diamond rings, but you would still give me up. I could tell you all the ways that you're changing me. You keep lying on my face and then blaming me. I was really starting to think you were saving me, but the whole fucking time you was breaking me,
All right, let's hear the tube real quick.
I could give you every piece of me. I know that's not enough. I could buy you cars and diamond rings, but you still give me up. I could tell you all the ways that you're changing me. You keep lying on my face and then blaming me. I was really starting to think you were saving me, but the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah.
All right, so some quick thoughts. I prefer the tube on my voice for this song because my voice has some really harsh resonance around like 1.5 to 3K, and I feel like that gets accented with the FET mic, where I feel like that gets smoothed out a little bit with tube. And I don't have a lot of low end in my voice. It's kind of a resonant, kind of just boxy low end, and I feel like the tube really smooths out the low mids of my personal voice, and the FET just sounds a little bit thin for my voice for this song. So I would go tube for my voice for this instance specifically. However, if I had a super chesty voice, if I was doing a song that needed a much brighter kind of cutting vocal, maybe I'd go FET. Let's hear an example where now they're going to go back and forth like we did just a second ago. So it'll be FET tube, FET tube.
I could give you every piece of me. I know that's not enough. I could buy you cars and diamond rings, but you still give me up. I could tell you all the ways that you're changing me. You keep lying on my face and then blaming me. I was really starting to think you were saving me, but the whole fucking time you was breaking me, yeah.
Now, I will say, if I had the FET mic and I wanted to kind of EQ and compress that for my voice specifically for the whole song, I could make something sound incredible and totally usable with a FET mic. However, I feel like just off rip, the tube mic for me sounds like I'm sitting in the mix rather than on top of it, where with the FET, I feel a little bit disconnected from the instrumentation. So I would go tube in this instance for my personal opinion for this personal example. But now I've shown you tube versus FET in spoken word, I've shown you proximity, and I've shown you a sang vocal. Let's go ahead and let's hear the last little example, which is acoustic guitar tracking. So this will be a good example on a time that I think that I personally prefer FET. So here's what the FET sounds like. We're going to do some strumming and then some finger picking. And again, I have nothing on the guitar bus or on the master whatsoever. So there's what the FET mic on an acoustic guitar sounds like. The guitar was a Taylor CE 214, and I had both of these mics sitting about right at the 12th fret mark, kind of pointed towards the body. So we're still getting a lot of that low mid, but it's not super boomy. And again, these were both the same exact recording. So there's FET, here is tube. So there's what they sound like. I will do an example where I play them back to back, but for me, I like the FET mic better on acoustic guitar. I find that the tube mic, acoustic guitar already to me has so much low end and low mids that I find gets really muddy in a mix. I'm always scooping like 150 to 400 very aggressively with acoustic guitar, and I find that that just gets accented with the tube that I don't really need anyway. I'd rather have the FET where it can push that kind of aggressive bite of an acoustic guitar so it can really sit in the mix without just being super muddy low end and super kind of slappy string hits. So I would go FET mic on the acoustic personally in almost every example, unless I wanted to do like a really, really soft folk song. So here's what they sound like. I'm going to switch them back and forth in real time. We're going to start with FET and then go to tube. And there you have it. You can clearly hear that the tube and the FET have their own characteristics. I think this is a really good example of how there's no good microphone and there's no bad microphones really, especially at this price point. It's really what do you prefer these mics on? What is their kind of signature use? And then other than that, it's really just personal taste and preference. So when you're picking out a microphone, keep in mind what source you're using it on. Keep in mind what kind of style of music you make. What's your mixing preferences? Do you like bright vocals? Do you like dark vocals? Do you like boomy vocals? It really, really just depends. I don't think that you can have a bad pick. And again, for this video, we used the Vanguard V4 as the FET and the V13 as a tube mic. I think these are both great microphones, especially in that kind of mid-tier price range of, $500 to $1,000 for FET mics and, $1,000 to $2,500 for tube mics. So these would be my mid-tier budget. If you're going for a super beginner-friendly budget, I would say go with the Lauten Audio Black Series. So the 220 is their FET mic and the 320 is their tube mic. I believe that the 220 is like $350 and the 320 I believe is close to $700. And then if you're really, really looking to splurge on an FET or a tube microphone, I think stay with Lauten Audio and go towards their Atlantis and their Eden. Both of those microphones are incredible, super flexible because they have the actual forward, neutral, and gentle settings. So if you're looking to spend top dollar and get a really, really good versatile FET or tube, I think go with the Lauten Atlantis or the Eden. If you want mid-price, go with these Vanguard mics. They're incredible. And if you want super beginner and budget-friendly, go with the Lauten Audio Black Series. But that's the differences between FET mics and tube mics. We talked a little bit about terminology, how they actually work, and you got to hear some audio examples. So if you like this video, please let us know in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to our channel if you want to see more stuff like this. Let us know what videos you want to see in the near future down below. And then other than that, if you want to support us, you can head over to our website, makepopmusic.com. We have a bunch of free content over there. We also have sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, and a start-to-finish production course where we talk about everything that I do when I'm hired to produce a song for a paying artist or client. So head over to our website and check all of that out. But again, thank you so much to Vanguard for actually sending me these mics to test out. I really, really appreciated getting to use them. Hopefully this video made it a little bit easier for you to choose what microphone you're looking for. We'll see you next week. But until then, much love, everyone. Peace.